Welcome back to Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind. I'm Corey Shapiro. We are starting a new series, Responding Without Escalating. In this episode, we're going to talk about why your response matters more than their trigger. Now, I want to talk to you about two traps that I see happening a lot. You have on one side the avoider and on one side the aggressor. And let me just explain what happens or what I see happening. The aggressor is someone who does too much. You know, if it's an eye for an eye, it's like an eye for a whole body. They do 10 times than what's needed. And the avoider is minimizing everything and freezing. So let me give you examples, and I'll start off with the avoider. Let's say you have a practical attorney. They usually start a divorce with sending an email with an attachment. It's in a letter, and it says, your spouse retained me, want to get an amicable divorce, and please have your attorney contact me. But when the avoider sees something like this, instead of responding, they ignore. They're freaking out. They don't want a divorce. They can't deal with this. They can't process, and they're not going to make it easy. So they're like, well, how would they know I even got the email? So they just don't respond. But then a few weeks later, another email comes from that same attorney following up. And this time it's a quick delete or a quick archive. They're not looking at it. They're not engaging. But then several weeks go by, and then maybe, as they drop the kids off to school or go to work, they get served with court papers for the divorce. And that's a bad day. But even then, they don't do anything. And then weeks go by, and then finally, they get a notice that there's a court appearance. And that's maybe when a lot of avoiders finally reach out to an attorney. Let me contrast that with the aggressor. The aggressor gets that same email looking for an amicable divorce. Have your attorney contact me within a few weeks. But this time, the aggressor hires the most badass litigator they can find, and literally within just 2 or 3 days, they serve the other side with divorce papers. Serve in person. Again, the other spouse wanted an amicable divorce. They didn't need to escalate, but they did. So that's the aggressor. And also, when you read these court papers, even though, let's say, this aggressor really hasn't been involved with the children, they're going to ask for sole custody, right? Just to frame the issue. And this has nothing to do about the children. This has all about to do with hard-knuckle negotiation. Now, let me give you a third way. Let's call it a strategic response. Okay, if the avoider does nothing, the aggressor does too much, what does a strategic responder do? Well, first, they're going to wait a day. That's a 24-hour pause to get back to neutral. And then when they do respond, they may say something like this. Thank you for your email. I'm in the process of getting an attorney. They will be in contact shortly. Boom. That's it. You could even throw that through ChatGPT, phrase it the correct way, and you're on your way. You didn't avoid. You didn't escalate. You're playing the long game. So let me put my lawyer hat on here for a moment and just tell you why this is so important. Judges are human. So if your divorce goes south and you need to have a decider, which is the judge, their discretion matters. And a lot of how they decide things reminds me of how they graded things in college. When I was in college, the professor would know who I am. It's not a standardized test. And they can give you the benefit of the doubt. They don't give you the benefit of the doubt if they don't know you, like on a standardized test. And if everything else is very similar and all else things being equal, and the avoider showed poor judgment starting the case, or the aggressor is showing poor judgment, being too aggressive and taking these extreme positions, then the judge may rule against you, everything else being sort of equal. And let me just drive home one point. The court does not pause for grief. Grieving takes 2 years. The court knows that, but they got to move forward. There's a no-fault divorce in most states, and the court is going to go forward, and they're going to make you get involved with this divorce. So grieving is not an excuse. Let me give you some objections that come up. Now, from the avoider perspective, they might say, hey, I didn't want this. And I appreciate that. But remember, you still have to engage. This is a process. And it might be a while for you to really accept where you are. But this is the process you're in. And only reason I'm pushing you a little bit, and I know this is hard because I've represented avoiders, is I don't want it to hurt you later on. So you're going to have to engage. You're going to have to move forward, even though you don't want to. And for the aggressors, what I'm going to hear is, they started it. It's like they started it. Okay, yeah, I hear you. Yes, they did, but there was no reason, to sort of bring, maybe like a baseball bat to this fight when there was really no fight. They were trying to be collaborative. Okay, and that's your fear. It's like fear aggression. There's no reason to escalate unnecessarily. And I know that's challenging, but that's what you did. You brought a baseball bat, and it's literally the person who snuck in your house is literally your kid who came home late. There's no need for that baseball bat. No one's breaking in. Calm down. All right. So what's my core message to you? What you're going to learn is divorce is really like a chess match. It's not a boxing match. You got to think ahead. You got to plan. You got to play the long game. And difficult divorces can take years. So we're playing chess. I know it's hard to think about chess when you're in an emotional turbulence and you're in survival mode, but that's why we started this season with finding your footing. And now we're moving into more strategy, responding without escalating. That's where we are. All right, so next episode, we're going to deal with the perspective check. That's how to borrow wisdom from your future self. I'm Corey Shapiro. Let's step forward with clarity.
This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.